The Art Center inspires creativity and contributes to
community well-being
through equitable access to
and engagement with visual arts.
We collaborate to offer exhibitions,
learning opportunities, artist development,
and cultural events centered on
art, artists, and art enthusiasts in the greater Corvallis area.
Welcome to TAC Makes. I'm here today with Erin Robinson Grant, a Portland-based multimedia artist. Her work will be exhibited at the Art Center's Corinne Woodman Gallery this spring, and her exhibition titled Vivarium will be on view from February 27th to April 12th. Erin, thank you so much for joining me today and to talk a little bit about your current work and your creative practice.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
So can you familiarize the listener a little bit with how you approach your artistic practice and where your interests stem from?
You know, it's interesting how my practice has kind of evolved, especially since I moved to Portland over 10 years ago. I feel that I've really kind of focused on the same subject matter pretty consistently ever since later undergrad and graduate school. I've always been really attracted to things having to do with human anatomy, animal anatomy. I'm really interested in ideas of abjection, things that are very, disgusting and grotesque, but also things that we are inherently attracted to, things that, we can't help but look at. And those sort of like visual contradictions that are, very, very hard to describe in words, I feel, especially in English, but then nonetheless evoke very, very strong feelings within us. I feel like I keep telling people this a lot lately, but one of the things that I finally admitted to myself last year, and it took me pretty much all my life to finally admit this, I get bored very easily. So I really, when I talk about being a multimedia artist, it's mainly because I'm always exploring different processes, new media, whether that's, physical processes such as felting, which I just recently learned, using sculpture, using newer materials like, say, foam clay, like people who do cosplaying use to make their crazy armory and such and weapons, using that to create as a new way to create, muscle textures and different sorts of fur and feather effects, all the way to digital media, where I do quite a bit of video work. While I'm not showing it in this show, I'm also very interested in, using special effects that, up until recently, were only available to say, Hollywood producers and, big budget Hollywood movies, now through Adobe's After Effects, we have the ability, I have the ability to use green screen to make some pretty gnarly looking things. So that's kind of led me up to, what I'm making today.
So can you talk a little bit about the materials and approach you use specifically for this Corinne Woodman show, Vivarium?
Yeah, so it's interesting because in a previous art show I had a couple of years ago, I've done smaller scale kind of sculpture in various exhibits, over the course of my career. But it was originally because of COVID. I ended up, being laid off for like 5 months. And to me, it was like, sweet, I get to go and spend all this extra time in my studio so it could actually start to be a bit more ambitious. And so I really, from that, I really started experimenting with, materials in different kinds of way. and really starting to construct like larger scale pieces, things like, trees, for instance, and creating, these different like sculptures and, creatures to kind of reside, in these pieces. Before, I was using paper mache quite a bit. And while that's a really great material and it really yielded, this very strange texture that I thought, was interesting. And actually everybody was just like, wow, what is this? Because, one of the things I love more than anything is really transforming the material to really, just to surprise people. And no one realized it was paper mache or anything. Unfortunately, paper mache, transporting it's fragile. It's, you get it to the site and you're inevitably going to have to do some repair. So I really wanted, I knew I wanted to create, again, these strange sort of like trees that were, not just evocative of, say, bark or something, but even maybe like kind of like coral or even maybe like sagging skin. And so I was like, okay, so how can I use this process with a sturdier material? So I actually started just getting cheap shop rags, actually made out of cotton. And I just made a thicker kind of glue and basically like used paper mache for that. And wow, it held up. It was super sturdy. And then from that, I took molding paste actually, and I kind of modeled it around and then kind of created this antique sort of brown like paint over the top. Yeah, I honestly, when they were finally starting to come together, I mean, this is going to sound weird, but usually I have a pretty good idea where I'm going. Even if like it sounds kind of loopy or whatever, I feel like at this point in my career, I have a very good handle on where I can push materials and how it's going to look. But usually it's not, it's never quite exactly what you imagine, and that's kind of the push and pull of, working with these different materials. You got to respond to it as it happens. But with this, I was like, wow, this is something. And it's something that I know from here I'm going to be exploring further, actually.
Well, I love that you were surprised. And
Yeah.
because if it turns out exactly the way you think, what's the point of making it, right? I guess. And but I love that, this is the process of preparing for the show has opened up a new door. That's really exciting. Can you talk a little bit about the title you chose for the show and how it connects to the work you're going to be presenting?
As I mentioned before, prior to this interview, I'm not a linguist, so from what I can kind of gather, Vivarium, it's basically kind of talking about this old-timey kind of idea of having this sort of contained, quote unquote, natural environment, that you have sort of reined in order to, quote unquote, objectively observe and to kind of create scientific, conclusions based on that. But just by the matter of putting something in a box that's already not natural. I think that concept has always really interested me, how, I think that we kind of kid ourselves how much we really affect and, manipulate our environment all the time around us. We are from nature, obviously, we're made from the same cellular stuff that's, all around us, that's in cats and dogs and deer and birds and whatnot. But, we exert such a force and sometimes such an awful force on everything around us. So I was kind of thinking about these things and knowing that this was, not going to be a huge space to exhibit in. It was going to be a more intimate space. I sort of thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to kind of create this sort of natural/unnatural environment for the show. And part of it, I've always been interested in anatomy. I have tons and tons of books. I live in Portland. I go to Powell's. I come home with more every year. It's, such is life in Portland. Portland, Oregon. Last year, and I think really what the start of the show was, honestly, I kind of knew that there were things that I kind of wanted to change in my life. I'm kind of pivoting my career at the moment. But one of the things I really wanted to do, and one of the things that I was always sad about from my time originally in college, was I never got the opportunity. When I went to the Cleveland Institute of Art, there was an anatomy class where you could go over to the medical school at Case and participate in gross anatomy while the medical students worked through their, cadaver dissection, and then you could, draw on everything from it. And I was really sad that I missed out on that, because that's such an opportunity. And so I thought about it, and I was like, I wonder, crazy thought, maybe there's somewhere that does like a continuing education class, and I can go and I could participate in this. And what do you know, in North Carolina, there is one. It's I believe it's called Experience Anatomy, actually, and it's just it's run by a woman who has a degree in, I think it's like forensic medicine, I believe. And she basically was like, it's really important to have this opportunity, not just available to people who become, medical doctors, but for people who are in other parts of the medical fields, for instance. So I signed up for a 2-day workshop, and the other people who were there, I was the only dental technician who was there, but I was glad to be there because, I was able to teach some people some stuff about the person's teeth. There were massage therapists, there were physical therapists, there were chiropractors, and it just was really great. It was this wonderful opportunity. And, I'm not a religious person by any means, but there is something about having the opportunity to really see what we're made of, if that makes sense. And also understanding that it's such a rare opportunity that very few people ever, get that. So I think from that, it really kind of, I suppose that's what kind of initially inspired me and kind of got me back into thinking about the body and the different parts of it and how they like interact, and how revealing that is its own kind of experience in itself. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. And then finding out about the show, and that kind of like helped guide the work that I'm able to produce for the show.
Well, thank you so much for considering the space, and I'm really looking forward to inevitably the immersive experience that this is going to end up being. And thank you so much for spending time with us today and talking about your upcoming show.
Thank you.
Yeah. Vivarium will be on view in the Corinne Woodman Gallery at the Art Center in Corvallis, Oregon, starting February 27th. Erin will join us at the Art Center for the Corvallis Arts Walk on March 21st, so you can stop by and meet her in person then. Thank you for listening to TAC Makes. This is a new creative project at the Arts Center, and I hope you enjoy our learning curve as much as we do. You can find more episodes on YouTube and Spotify, and on our website, theartscenter.net. That's arts with an S.